because we want, but we want to come because we praise you. We want to be a light in this dark world, and I know that you are with us and you give us the strength to do the right thing. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If members and guests will remain standing, we'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by the gentleman at 24th, Dr. Bridges.
Thank you. Please join me in honoring our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Tuesday, March 16th, 2021.
Gentleman from the 31st, Dr. Tony.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and have approved have been read.
Gentleman from 31st, ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? There are no objections. Introduction of guests. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our doctor of the day is Dr. Guha from Charleston. Please make him welcome.
Reports of standing committees.
Your Committee on Energy and Manufacturing has had under consideration House Bill 2959 relating to the financing of environmental pollution control equipment for coal-fired power plants. Reports back to committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration House Bill 2796, supplemental appropriation bill is to expire funds to the surplus balance of general revenue and to supplement and increase an item of appropriation in the aforesaid account for the designated spending unit for expenditure during the fiscal year 2021.
The report will be received.
House Bill 2829, providing for the amortization of annual funding deficiencies for municipal police or firefighters' pension and relief funds. House Bill 2897, expiring funds to the balance of the Department of Commerce. House Bill 2899, making a supplementary appropriation to the Department of Commerce, and House Bill 2920, making a supplementary appropriation to the Department of Health and Human Resources, Division of Health, Laboratory Services Fund. Reports the same back with recommendation that each do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had in consideration House Bill 2026 relating to the modernization of the collection of income taxes by adopting uniform provisions relating to the mobile workforce. Reports back a committee substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your
Don't report the education bill if we already done it. Don't do it today. Don't report that today. Do not report it.
Your committee. Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2364, permit teachers in K through 12 schools be authorized to carry concealed firearms as a designated school protection officer. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received and that bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 2793, permit out-of-state residents to obtain West Virginia concealed carry permits. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 156, authorizing the Department of Homeland Security to promulgate legislative rules. Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 160, authorizing the Department of Revenue to promulgate legislative rules. And Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 182, authorizing miscellaneous agencies and boards to promulgate legislative rules. reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that each do pass as amended.
That report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2962 relating generally to dental practice, reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass as amended and that it be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
The report will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization. Are there further reports to standing committees? If not, reports to select committees. Message from the Executive.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Henshaw presents a communication from His Excellency the Governor advising that on March 16, 2021, he approved Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 12, Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 216, Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 345, Senate Bill 358, and Senate Bill 459.
The message will be received. Message from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announced that the Senate has passed with amendment and a title amendment Committee Substitute for House Bill 2006 relating to the West Virginia Contractor Licensing Act.
That message will be received. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration.
Are there objections? There are no objections. The lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee substitute for House Bill 2006, if you'll recall, transfers the West Virginia Contractor Licensing Act from administration and regulation by the Division of Labor to regulation under the provisions of professions and occupations in Chapter 30 of our code. The Senate amendment altered the definitions of a contractor by reducing the dollar amounts for residential and commercial work without requiring a license. The amendment does not require a contractor's license for any person performing residential work for $5,000 or less or commercial work for $25,000 or less. The Senate amendment added the Contractors Licensing Review Board on the PERD review schedule for 2024. The House version did not require a contractor's license for any person performing residential work for less than $10,000 and commercial work for less than $50,000. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House concur with the Senate amendment and title amendment.
House will be at ease. House will return to order. The question before the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the House concur in the Senate amendment and title amendment to committee substitute for House Bill 2006. Is there discussion on the motion? If the gentleman at 36, Douglas Rowe, is recognized.
A question. Currently, I think you said that no license is required for residential work if the value of the work was less than $5,000.
Right. If you'll recall, the House version said $10,000 for residential work. The Senate amended that to say $5,000.
Now, do you know what it is now? I was looking through the bill and I couldn't find it quick enough.
It is now $2,500.
So if the bill passes in the form that the Senate sent through, it'll go from $2,500 to a requirement of a contract over $5,000.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Is there further discussion on the motion? If not, the question is the motion that the House concur in the Senate amendment entitled Amendment to Committee Substitute for House Bill 2006. Those in favor of that motion will please say aye. Aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes appear to have it. Ayes have it. Chair declares that motion adopted. The question now then before the House is the passage of the bill. It says a debatable question. Is there a debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? This is committee substitute for House Bill 2006. Those in favor of passage of the bill as amended by the Senate, concurred in by the House, will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 69 ayes, 30 nays, and 1 member absent or were not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2006 relating to the West Virginia Contractor Licensing Act.
Are there further title amendments? If not, the title as amended by the Senate, concurred in by the House, will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next message from the Senate.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 318 relating generally to public notice of unclaimed property held by state treasurer.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 500 prohibiting intimidation and retaliation against public officers and employees, jurors, and witnesses.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 518 relating to grounds for administrative dissolution of certain companies, corporations, and partnerships.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Are there further Senate messages? If not, resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 57, a resolution to establish a state bank of West Virginia.
Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the delegate console system.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the delegate console system. Are there objections? There are no objections. Petitions, motions, bills introduced, unfinished business, bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 404, modifying well work permits issued by DEP Office of Oil and Gas.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 8th, Douglas Anderson, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill, as proposed, would create a statutory fee of $2,500 for applications to modify oil and gas permits issued under the Natural Gas Horizontal Well Control Act. Currently, there is no modification fee in place. The Office of Oil and Gas will use this additional fee to help fund its operations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman to the 51st, Douglas Hanson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a very good bill. It'll raise about $500,000 a year for our DEP's Office of Oil and Gas that will go toward inspectors. The problem, though, is that they're in a deficit right now of about $1.3 million. So while this bill will get us part of the way where we need to get, it's not going to get us all the way where we need to get. Right now we have about 1 inspector per 7,000 wells, and that was not made any better by the passage of the Above Ground Storage Tank Act, which added about 900 more wells for these inspectors to cover. So I hope that in addition to passing this bill, we can find other ways to raise the revenue that's required to fully fund the inspectors at the Office of Oil and Gas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the bill? The Gentleman the 8th, Douglas Anderson, to close debate on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I agree with the gentleman from Monongalia County. This bill came over from the Senate. It helps to address the problem in the Office of Oil and Gas within DEP to help fund their operations. It will raise approximately $500,000. It will permit them to reinstate, hopefully, some of their inspectors to increase the inspection rate. It is a beginning salvo, I guess, at attempting to get that office funded in a way that they can carry out their functions. This office is dependent only upon drilling permits fees, and the amount of drilling right now in the state is down. And this is an attempt to get them some funds into the office. It's not what they need to maintain the inspection program that I would like to see, but I urge support for the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 77 ayes, 22 nays, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 404, modifying well work permits issued by DEP Office of Oil and Gas.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Anderson moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2400, authorizing the Department of Transportation to promulgate legislative rules.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman of the 35th, Douglas Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, everybody. The rules bundle before you comes to us from the Division of Transportation. The committee substitute is House Bill 2400. The first rule is 157 CSR 5 and provides updates for requirements to traffic control, safety, special permits for oversized and overweight loads, and also makes numerous renumbering revisions throughout, which are necessary due to the regulatory update. Next rule, 91 CSR 04, is for the Division of Motor Vehicle and deals with the examination and issuance of driver's licenses. 91 CSR 5 is another DMV rule, deals with denial, suspension, revocation, disqualification, restriction, non-renewal, cancellation, administrative appeals, and reinstatement of driving privileges. 91 CSR 13 is a DMV rule dealing with compulsory motor vehicle liability insurance. Mr. Speaker, that's a summarization of the rules bundle. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2400, authorizing the Department of Transportation to promulgate legislative rules.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The question before the House is the motion by the lady from the 49th that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 member absent or not voting. 2/3 of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2794 to extend the Neighborhood Investment Program Act to July 1, 2026.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having read? If not, the lady from the third, Douglas Storch, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee substitute for House Bill 2794 would amend the provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to the Neighborhood Investment Tax Credit. The bill extends the credit through July 1st, 2026. Current law would expire the credit for contributions made after July 1st, 2021. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? This is a debatable question. Is there a debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2794 to extend the Neighborhood Investment Program Act to July 1, 2026.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2817, Donated Drug Repository Program.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 28th Delegate Pack to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. House Bill 2817 is the same bill that passed the House last year. The bill permits the Board of Pharmacy to establish and administer a donated drug repository program. Eligible drugs include both over-the-counter drugs and prescription drugs. These drugs may be submitted in unopened, tamper-evident packaging and may not be a controlled substance. The bill establishes how the drugs are to be received, handled, stored, dispensed, distributed, and disposed of. Anyone participating in this program is immune from liability except for willful and wanton misconduct. The bill permits rulemaking authority by the Board of Pharmacy to implement this program. Mr. Speaker, urge passage. I do.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 99 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 member absent or not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2817, Donated Drug Repository Program.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk. Will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3078, relating to powers and duties of the Parole Board.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman of the 35th Delegate Capito to explain the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the bill adds some language to our code that provides that current inmates that are in the prisons in West Virginia are able to now explore alternatives in how they're able to finish their sentences in West Virginia. What we have now is, in West Virginia, if there's an inmate in our prison systems, they're required to complete certain life skills classes. And once those classes are complete, they're able to be released onto parole. The bill before you changes that so that now inmates are able to complete those classes in the communities. So this will allow inmates to get out of prison earlier and re-enter into society and complete their classes in the communities. This was brought about and brought to the attention mostly as a result of the pandemic. We found that what was happening in our correction system is that many of our inmates weren't able to qualify for parole because many of the classes that were required to be eligible for parole were being canceled due to the restrictions caused by COVID. And what we discovered was there was a backlog and we were holding more and more prisoners. So this should help our our prison bills. This is a good criminal justice piece of reform, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 93 ayes, 6 nays, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3078, relating to powers and duties of the Parole Board.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3081, updating the West Virginia Business Corporations Act.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 12th Douglas Westfall to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 3081 was originated in the Banking and Insurance Committee. The purpose of the bill is to allow corporate shareholders and nonprofit corporate members meetings to be able to conduct their meeting remotely as precaution in the pandemic or similar public health emergencies. The bill has been drafted retroactive from March 1st, 2020, because many shareholders and member meetings are scheduled annually for June, and many corporations and nonprofits have conducted their meetings remotely this year and last year. Mr. Speaker, that's a bill, and I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk. Gentleman 32nd, Doug Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had my light pressed.
You're recognized.
I apologize. Thank you. Would the gentleman yield? I just want to ask, anything that's done in this bill, it defers to the articles, any express language in the articles or the bylaws. Is that correct regarding
Correct.
Remote
Correct.
meetings?
They can still have the meetings in person or now remotely. Correct.
Okay, and it defers to directives. It doesn't override the bylaws or the articles of incorporation.
Does not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3081, updating the West Virginia Business Corporations Act.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk. Will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill take effect from passage.
The question is on the motion by the lady from the 49th that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 99 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 member absent or not voting. 2/3 of members elected having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill effective from passage. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3128, relating to carrier fees on 911 fee revenues.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman from the 32nd, Doug Fast, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3128 is a bill that amends the code to provide clarity of the calculation of 3% fee retained by commercial mobile radio service providers. Clarifies that payments to the counties are based on net 911 fee revenues received by the Commission, and to require the public safety fee to be shown as 2 separate lines on a customer's bills. That's a summary of the bill. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? The gentleman of 34th Douglas Boggs is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman yield.
Yes.
To my friend, this bill went through judiciary. I just wondered if this affected in any way the revenue that would be received in each county for their 911 services in a positive or negative manner.
No.
No change at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman of 36, Second row, is recognized.
Yes, for a question, sir.
Yes.
So there's no state impact on, there's no impact on state funds as a result of this bill, correct?
No, there was no fiscal note on this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the bill? If not, the question then before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? How does the gentleman from the 29th wish to be recorded? Yes. Gentleman from the 29th wishes to be recorded in the affirmative. On that question, there were 99 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3128, relating to carrier fees on 911 fee revenues.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 3133, relating to motor carrier rates.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman in 32nd, Douglas Fast, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to correct errors occurring upon the passage of the amended version of House Bill 4587 last year by adding back to the code language setting forth the procedure for charging rates. The motor carriers and to amend errors in the new statute 24A52A and the amendment passed in 2020 under 24A25 for transfer of certificates. That's a summary, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there were 98 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 member absent or not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 3133, relating to motor carrier rates.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 5, relating to claims arising out of West Virginia Consumer Credit and Protection Act.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 42, creating Zombie Property Remediation Act of 2021.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 523, correcting improper code reference.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2495, relating to the filing of asbestos and silica claims.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2830, relating generally to sex trafficking.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2854, relating to the West Virginia Municipal Police Officers and Firefighters Retirement System.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2855, relating to the Natural Resources Police Officers Retirement System.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2896, making a supplementary appropriation to the Department of Health and Human Resources, Division of Human Services.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2898, making a supplementary appropriation to Workforce West Virginia Workforce Investment Act.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2901, making a supplementary appropriation to the Department of Health and Human Resources, Division of Human Services.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2903, making a supplementary appropriation to the Department of Homeland Security, West Virginia State Police.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2940, making a supplementary appropriation to the Department of Education, State Board of Education, State Department of Education.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2941, supplementary appropriation decreasing an existing item and adding a new item of appropriation to the Department of Revenue Insurance Commissioner.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3129, relating to the consumer price index rate increase.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3130, relating to elimination of sunset provisions concerning towing rates.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3132, relating to motor carrier inspectors.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Capito moves to amend the bill. This is HFA Capito 3-16, number 1.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having it read? If not, the gentleman at 35th to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We passed a bill, I believe, yesterday or the day before that dealt with home incarceration officers. The amendment before you simply clarifies and syncs the code in light of that passage. I urge adoption of the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment just explained by the gentleman at 35th. Is there debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3134, creating a new criminal defense prohibiting public disclosure of restricted information.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 3175, relating to removing certain felonies that can prohibit vehicle salespersons from receiving a license.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 469, permitting and establishing requirements for appearance by video for purpose of notarial acts.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2174, West Virginia Monument and Memorial Protection Act of 2021.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2496, relating to assessments of real property.
The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2499, tax reduction for arms and ammo manufacturing.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2630, requiring DEP to reimburse fines paid by towns, villages, and communities in certain instances.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2633, creating the 2021 Farm Bill.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2742, providing explicit authority to process an online driver's license or identification renewal or reissuance when the applicant needs to update the address.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2777, repeal municipal amusement tax.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2782, repeal domestic animal tax.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2808, remove salt from list and definition of mineral for severance tax purposes.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2823, exempting building or structures utilized exclusively for agricultural purposes from the provisions of the State Building Code.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2914, to remove certain ex officio voting members from the Archives and History Commission and updating formatting.
Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleague, Delegate Brown.
Are there objections? There are no objections, and a leave of absence shall be granted. Introductions? Miscellaneous business? If not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Thursday, March 18th.
The question before the House is the motion that, subject to announcements, the House stand adjourned at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Chair will begin by announcing that the House will be in order to receive remarks by members at 5 p.m. this evening. Remarks by members at 5 p.m. this evening. Gentleman the 10th, Doug Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet tomorrow morning, March 18th at 9 a.m. in the House chamber. The agenda will be posted. Thank you.
Lady in the 49th, Doug Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Rules will meet at 10:45 tomorrow morning in House Education.
Gentleman the 32nd, Doug Fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee on Judiciary will meet tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. in the Judiciary Room, and the agenda will be posted.
Gentleman the 13th, Doug Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Republicans on your Education Committee will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. upstairs, and then the committee itself will meet at 1:30 tomorrow here in the House chamber. Thank you.
Gentleman 15th, Doug Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow, March 18th at 3 p.m. in the Government Organization Committee Room. The agenda will be posted. And also, Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Government Organization will host a virtual public hearing for House Bill 2174 today, Wednesday, March 17th at 3 p.m. To listen, click on the link in the House Government Organization Committee's webpage. Thank you.
Gentleman 17th, Doug Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. So that's a little bit of a time change. 2 p.m., Republican members will caucus at 1:45 in the chairman's office. So 2 p.m. at GovOrg tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the agenda will be posted. Thank you.
The June the 7th, look at Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Workforce Development will meet at 1 p.m. Right here in the House chamber, and the agenda will be posted. Thank you.
The June the 45th, Douglas Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Political Subdivisions will meet today at 4 p.m. in the House Government Organization, and the agenda has been posted. Thank you.
Lady in the 41st, Douglas Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your PEIA subcommittee of the Committee of Health and Human Resources will meet today, March 17th at 4 p.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room. Thank you.
Lady in the 38th, Douglas Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll have a Republican Freshman Caucus tomorrow morning. That's March 18th, 8 a.m. in the House GovOrg room, and breakfast will be provided.
Lady in the 52nd, Douglas Seipold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Seniors, Children, and Family Issues will meet today at 1 o'clock in the Government Organization Room. Thank you.
June the 22nd, Douglas Maynard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet today in the House chamber at 3 o'clock. The agenda is posted. Also, your subcommittee on bridge naming resolutions will meet at 2:45 in the back of the chamber.
The June the 44th, Douglas Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will not meet today.
The June the 30th, Douglas Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There'll be a citation presentation at 2 p.m. in the well of the chamber this afternoon. I'll be joined by the Speaker and the Majority Leader. It's for the American Physical Therapy Association. It's its 100th anniversary. And I'd like to extend an invitation to anyone that has a school in their area, Morgantown, Huntington, Wheeling, Martinsburg, Huntington, Fairmont, where we have PTA programs. So if you'd like to join me down here, we'll have a picture taken. And I want to assure the gentleman from Putnam that despite his best efforts to deregulate the health professions, we intend to be around for another 100 years. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The June the 45th, Douglas Martin.
I just want to let everybody know that everyone in political subdivisions, there will be food provided this evening. So.
The June the 37th, Douglas Pushkin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of the Committee on Health and Human Resources will caucus at 1:30 tomorrow in my office.
Are there additional announcements? If not, the question before the House is the motion that the House stand adjourned at 11 a.m. Say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned at 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Senate will come to order. All those not having privilege of the floor will please vacate the chamber. Those in the gallery and those on the floor will please rise as we're led by the Senator from Greenbrier in prayer. Please remain standing after the prayer as the Senator from Marion leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. On this St. Patrick's Day, I'd like to offer a prayer that St. Patrick offered many, many moons ago. Let us pray. Permit us not, O Lord, to hear your word in vain. Convince us of its truth, cause us to feel its power, and bind us to yourself with the cords of faith, hope, and love that shall never be broken. We bind you to ourselves today, O God, your power to hold us, your hand to guide us, your eye to watch us, your ear to hear us, your wisdom to teach us, your word to give us speech, your presence to defend us, this day and every day, in the name of the Blessed Trinity. Amen.
Thank you. Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the members please rise, and all our guests that may be here, and also our wonderful support staff that helps us out every day, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Reading of the journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, March 16, 2021. The Senate met at 11 a.m. Senator Blair, Mr. President, in the chair.
The senator from Jefferson requests unanimous consent that further reading the journal be dispensed with and the journal be approved. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Further reading the journal is dispensed with and the journal is approved. Introduction of guest. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, it is your pleasure of mine to introduce our doctor of the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have with us back Dr. Shomez Guha. If you wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give you a warm welcome again.
Further introductions. Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced that the House amended and passed Senate Bill 89, exempting certain kindergarten and preschool programs offered by private schools from registration requirements.
The message will be received. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate amend House amendments to Senate Bill 89.
The senior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate amend the House amendments to Senate Bill 89. Does the clerk have an amendment?
Yes, sir. Senator Rucker moved to amend the House of Delegates amendment to the bill on page 3, section 113.
Senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our question is consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate amendment to the House amendment requires the Head Start program to conduct criminal background checks in accordance with federal requirements. I urge passage.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is the adoption of the amendment to the House amendment to Senate Bill 89. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate concur in the House amendment to Senate Bill 89 as amended.
The senior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate concur in the House amendment to Senate Bill 89 as amended. Is there discussion? Senior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of the bill is to clarify that private, parochial, and church schools accredited under the Department of Education Policy 2330 are equally accredited as public schools directly accredited by the Department of Education and thus should equally benefit from the accreditation exemption of child care licensing. The House amendment did a few things. One, it clarified that existing exemptions related to programs operated by a county parks and recreation commission. Number two, it also created an exemption for the federal Head Start program. And finally, it simply amended the title. These changes clarify existing code and create a reasonable exemption for a federal program. I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is that the Senate concur in the House amendments to Senate Bill 89 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. The question now is passage the bill as amended. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those elected and having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of House Bill 2379, Make Criminal Invasion of Privacy a Felony.
The message will be received and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2770, including home confinement officers and definition of law enforcement officers.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 2776, creating the Air Ambulance Patient Protection Act.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 2888, relating to when contentions can be revised based on forensic scientific evidence that was not available at the time of conviction.
The message will be received and the bill will be referred to the Committee on the Judiciary.
The House adopted House Concurrent Resolution 8, naming the U.S. Army Specialist First Class Guy Hively Memorial Bridge.
The message will be received and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
House Concurrent Resolution 13, naming the Tech 5 U.S. Army Donald Tiny Lucas Memorial Bridge.
The message will be received and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
House Concurrent Resolution 16, naming the Private First Class Franklin D. Fraser Memorial Road.
The message will be received and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
House Concurrent Resolution 32, to name Gatewood Road in Fayette County as the Senator Shirley Love Memorial Road.
The message will be received and the resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration Senate Bill 36 relating to West Virginia Secondary School Activities Commission audits and reports back a committee substitute for same, and Senate Bill 636 requiring certain history and civics courses be taught in schools and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the two committee substitutes do pass. Respectfully submitted, Patricia Puertas Rucker, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 384, increasing minimum salaries for Bureau for Child Support Enforcement attorneys, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
The report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Bill 440 relating to requirements on abandoned or discontinued state highway or road, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
The report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 509, removing requirement that determination of medical stability be found prior to admission to mental health facility, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 569 relating to damages for medical monitoring, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 614, including family court judges and judges' retirement system, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
The report will be received, and under the original double committee reference, the bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution 16, naming the U.S. Marine Corps Corporal Roger Lee Booth Memorial Road, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it be adopted. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Health and Human Resources has had under consideration engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2024, expand use of telemedicine to all medical personnel, and has amended same, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass as amended. Respectfully submitted, Michael J. Maroney, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 2701 relating to authorizing the Division of Rehabilitation Services to approve acceptable training programs required for low vision individuals to obtain a Class G driver's license, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles H. Clements, Chair.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Finance has had under consideration engrossed House Bill 2788, expiring funds to the unappropriated surplus balance from the State Excess Lottery Revenue Fund. Engrossed Committee Substitute for House Bill 2789, supplementing and amending the appropriations to Public Defender Services. Engrossed Committee Substitute for House Bill 2802, supplementing and amending the appropriations of public monies out of the Treasury from the balance of monies remaining as an unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue to the Department of Homeland Security, Division of Emergency Management. Engrossed Committee Substitute for House Bill 2803, supplementing and amending the appropriations of public monies out of the Treasury from the balance of monies remaining as an unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue to the Department of Commerce, Division of Forestry. And engrossed House Bill 2804, expiring funds to the unappropriated surplus balance in the State Fund General Revenue for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, and reports the same back with the recommendation that they each do pass. Respectfully submitted, Eric J. Tarr, Chair.
The report will be received. Reports from select committees.
There are none.
Introduction of bills. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bill 645 through Senate Bill 658 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Senior Senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill 645 through Senate Bill 658 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 28 by Senator Stallings naming the U.S. Army Private Thomas D. Beckett Sr. Memorial Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 21 by Senator Weld recognizing the anniversary of the SS Sultana tragedy.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Motions. Petitions.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 27 naming the Walker Brothers Veterans Memorial Bridge.
The resolution will be referred to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Resolution 20 recognizing Disability Advocacy Day.
Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, the committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. The clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 20 designating March 17th, 2021 as Disability Advocacy Day at the legislature.
The question is on adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. This resolution recognizing Disability Advocacy Day is an important resolution, whereas there are over 400,000 West Virginians with disabilities. These individuals with disabilities, like all others, have the right to live, to work, and fully participate in their communities in order to realize their dreams. And whereas people with disabilities have the right to equal opportunity to live full productive lives as valued citizens in the community or setting of their choice, and whereas people with disabilities, Mr. President, have the right to receive the supports they need to exercise self-determination, achieve independence, and become productive employees in the workplace. And whereas West Virginia citizens with disabilities have banded together in a collective group, the Fair Shake Network, to help bring their concerns to the forefront of public awareness. And whereas the Fair Shake Network has developed a statewide network concerned with all types of disabilities and all age groups, providing opportunities for people to learn from each other and to take action together. And whereas the Fair Shake Network has become a credible source of information for policymakers, advocates, and the public on policies and programs that impact people with disabilities. And whereas organizations such as West Virginia Department of Rehabilitation Services, West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council, West Virginia's Parent Training and Information, the Job Squad, Disabilities Rights of West Virginia Center for Independent Living, Appalachian Center for Independent Living, Statewide Rehabilitation Council, West Virginia Association of the Deaf, Open Doors Incorporated, National Association of Social Workers, West Virginia Chapter, West Virginia University Center for Excellence in Disabilities, West Virginia Autism Training Center, West Virginia Olmsted Office, the West Virginia Parents Can, Aging and Disability Resource Network, Whole Families People First of West Virginia, the ACT of the Mid-Ohio Valley, and the ACT of West Virginia have joined together to help increase the public awareness of these issues and concerns involving West Virginians with disabilities through the Fair Shake Network. And, Mr. President, lastly, whereas the purpose of Disability Advocacy Day is to increase the awareness and understanding for all legislators, administrators, policymakers, and the public about the issues that are important to the individuals with disabilities. I urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Roll call's been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, on this question, there's 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent not voting. More than a majority of those having voted have voted in the affirmative. I declare this resolution adopted. Bills on third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 297 relating generally to modernizing Board of Treasury investments. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 297 would permit the Board of Treasury Investments to compensate its 2 appointed members in the amount of $500 per meeting attended. The committee substitute makes technical clarifications to the list of securities that the board may invest in, and it adds pooled securities with a weighted average maturity of 3 years or greater to the list of permitted investments. Finally, the bill would eliminate certain outdated restrictions on investment by the board in order to permit the board to invest it using more modern investment strategies. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. Clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 303, creating Local Government Labor and Consumer Marketing Regulatory Limitation Act. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 303 would create a new chapter and article in the code, and it would be designated as Chapter 8B, Article 1, Limitations on Labor Regulations, and the new article would have 6 sections in it. They're numbered 1 through 6. First section is a short title, be the Local Government Labor Regulatory Limitation Act. Section 2 contains some legislative findings. There's a finding by the legislature that in some places around the country, cities have attempted to set their own wage and hour standards different from those which exist in state law. And there's a finding that if that were allowed to happen in West Virginia, it would create an unworkable patchwork of regulations throughout the state. and it explains the legislature's intent. There's a definition section in Section 3, and then the prohibitions are set forth in Section 4. And basically, it's a preemption bill. It preempts municipalities or counties from doing any of the following things. And there are eight things. There were 9, but we amended one out on the floor yesterday. The 8 things that are prohibited relate to requiring specific information in an employment application. And these are things that are prohibited by regulation or ordinance. In other words, a county or a city may not adopt or enforce an ordinance or a regulation that does any of these things. 2 is requiring a minimum wage that's higher than the applicable minimum wage under state or federal law. 3 is requiring employers to pay an employee wage or fringe benefit based on prevailing wages. 4 is regulation of a work stoppage or strike. 5 is requiring an employer to provide an employee any paid or unpaid leave. 6 would be any ordinance or regulation requiring an employer or its employees to participate in educational apprenticeships that are not required by state or federal law. 7 is the regulation of hours and scheduling that an employer is required to provide for employees. 8 relates to the regulation of professions, licensing and professions, when the professions are licensed by the state of West Virginia as a whole. Those are the 8 prohibitions. Subsection B of that section makes it clear that the statute does not prohibit any lawfully enacted ordinance, policy, or regulation relating to zoning or time and place and manner of operation. Section 5 of the new article provides for injunctive relief for people who are aggrieved, injured, or affected by such an ordinance that a city or a county would adopt outside the provisions of this bill, inconsistent with the bill. Number 6, Section 6 provides exceptions. So it makes clear subsection A that the article doesn't prohibit a political subdivision from enforcing a written agreement voluntarily entered into. B says any ordinance, regulation, local policy adopted prior to the effective date of this article is nullified. It's void upon the effective date of the new article. And subsection C makes it clear that the provisions don't apply to the employees of a political subdivision. In other words, a city or a county can pay its employees any wage it chooses to do so. It can negotiate in hiring those people. They're not prohibited from doing that. And the final subsection makes it clear that political subdivisions are not prohibited under this from complying with the West Virginia Alcohol and Drug-Free Workplace Act. And the cross-reference to the code is set forth there. Mr. President, I'll be happy to try to answer questions regarding the legislation. Otherwise, I urge its passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Junior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to Senate Bill 303, and I urge the body to do the same in voting it down. There are a lot of problems and a lot of reasons for my opposition. The first is the fact that this is a boilerplate, aside from the amendment that the senator from Brooke was able to pass yesterday. This is a boilerplate ALEC bill. So there's no wonder that a new chapter has to be written. And it goes against everything this body and legislature has done over the last 10 years to create and allow our cities and counties to grow under their own leadership. Because, make no mistake, this bill usurps local control. It usurps local control on wages. It usurps local control on leave. It usurps local control to the extent that it micromanages and dictates from here in Charleston what volunteer fire departments should do and local boards of health are to do. Local control, it's a term of convenience to the extent that, like transparency so far this session, it's a conservative virtue that just isn't in play anymore. So when this bill was presented before the committee, the justification was from the American Chamber of Commerce, mind you, not the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce, that we need predictability. And the question was, well, are there businesses not coming to West Virginia because they're concerned about how Tyler County may handle a business versus Tucker County? No, there's no evidence of that. Well, the question was, has anyone come to you and said to you this will be an issue in the future? Again, the answer was no. There was no support for the argument for this bill with regard to predictability. Yet it made it through committee and it's before us today. And while it was in committee, and again, one of the proponents of the bill, I was focused on if we're allowing our mayors and city councils to do these things, or actually we would be disallowing them, because the concern was, well, if Target decides to come to West Virginia, they don't want to pay a different wage in Kanawha County as may be paid in Putnam County. And I, rightly, because we're all elected officials, understand that politically, if that's a decision that's not successful and embraced by the local community, the mayors and the city councils will have to answer for that. And she agreed with me. So I still didn't understand why this bill was necessary. But I figured it out afterwards. The proponents of this bill, the American Chamber of Commerce, aren't concerned about a mayor that may go out of office, get voted out of office for increasing a wage, or a city council for doing the same. They're concerned if it's successful. That's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about Kanawha County or Putnam County raising a wage, having business come, and then having to deal with that. That's the concern. That's the only concern I can see for trying to micromanage what the citizens in Paw Paw do from Charleston. How does a senator from Kanawha County get to dictate to the mayor of Paw Paw what the wages should be? That's their decision, based upon the people in their community, responding to whatever their special circumstances are. That's why this should be a no vote. That's why I oppose this bill, and I ask this body to do the same. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here we go again, imposing the state's will on the local folks. Senate Bill 303 blocks governments closest to the people from making their own decisions, plain and simple. That's what it does. In doing so, we are telling volunteer fire departments, emergency medical services, public health departments what they should do in their local communities. We are imposing our will. Senate Bill 303 would prohibit municipalities from regulating standards of care, conduct, or licensing fees for any profession regulated, licensed, or certified by the state of West Virginia. This language could bar a number of local regulations, including smoke-free regulations, food safety and health inspections, certifications related to inspection of public property, certifications related to school safety, regulations and licensure for child care facilities, and much more. Despite the Senator from Brooks' amendment yesterday, I don't see that limits the state's control of public health. Public health is still in this bill. Further, the fees associated with such permits and licensing are an important source to the income of local governments, allowing them to provide inspections and enforcement of these regulations, as well as many other local government services. These fees are a significant portion of local government budgets, and denying localities these funds would have devastating effect on what local government is able to function. My fear is, and the fear of many people, including the Coalition for Tobacco-Free West Virginia, health advocacy organizations such as American Lung Association, the Cancer Society, American Heart, they strongly oppose this, as it would take away local control and make it harder for county health departments to enact future smoke-free air, vaping product restrictions, as well as other public health regulations in the communities. Smoking and secondhand smoke exposure remain the leading causes of preventable death and disease in West Virginia. More than 65% of the population in West Virginia, workers and patrons, benefit from smoke-free workplaces, including restaurants and bars. That leaves 35% who are not protected from secondhand smoke. Folks, we're facing a global pandemic. We have all these stressors in our youth. Youth tobacco use is on the rise, and now is not the time to do anything like this. Again, why would we be blocking governments closest to the people from making their own decisions? I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Brooke.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, sometimes here can be accused to a fault of being too much of an advocate for local control in municipalities and counties. I had the amendment, the aforementioned amendment, on this piece of legislation yesterday, and I thought that amendment really went too far into getting into the affairs of a municipality or a county. And so, had my amendment not been adopted by this body, I would have voted against this bill. Because that amendment was adopted, I'm going to vote in favor of this piece of legislation today. And I'm going to do so because the things that are left remaining in this bill are areas of the law that the state has taken it upon itself to regulate, whether it be employment, wages. Those are things that we have made an active effort in regulating statewide. And so, because we have chosen to do that, and an action taken pursuant those provisions by a locality would be contra to what we have already carved out in state law, that's why I support this bill, because those are things that the state has already taken a position on and decided to regulate. Again, I thought that the part that I took out yesterday through my amendment went a little too far, and so I was glad to have that taken out. And what we have now before us, I don't think is does great violence to a locality to be able to regulate themselves. So for that reason, we'll support the bill as it is today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Morgan, wish to close? Senator from Morgan.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much. I do want to correct correct the record on a few points that have been addressed during the debate of this. Former versions of this bill could have, arguably, some argued or worried, maybe that's the correct word, worried that former versions of this bill might have had some effect on smoking or smoke-free regulations. I want everybody to listen and hear me clearly. This bill does not. As it lies before us now, it does not address smoking regulations, smoke-free workplace regulations, any tobacco regulations. They are not addressed at all in the bill as it lies before us. This bill, the passage of this bill, will not interfere with, change, or alter any smoke-free workplace regulations that exist from any municipality, health department, ordinance, or regulations, and this bill does not invalidate those or change them. So when we vote, let's be clear about what we're voting on, what it does, what it doesn't do. It does not do those things. And so if you're concerned, if a member's concerned that it might do those things, I can lay those concerns to rest, allay those fears. This bill does not address those issues at all. What this bill does do, it does preempt completely ordinances that a city or a county might pass relating to those labor-related areas that I mentioned. And so, if this bill becomes law, it'll be clear in our law that the city of Charleston, the city of Parkersburg cannot pass and enforce an ordinance, as Seattle and some other cities around the country have done, that there'll be a minimum wage in Charleston of $20. Every employer has to pay a minimum of $20 an hour to its employees, or any of the other labor-related regulations that we discussed. As this bill lies before us, it does preempt those completely. I won't sugarcoat that. It says no city, county, municipality can pass such a regulation. I contend that that's a good thing. We had testimony during the committee that employers want predictability and not variety from locality to locality in this state on what the minimum wage is. The policy question that lies before the Senate with this bill now is simply this: are those things of such importance that it should be set as a matter of statewide policy? Things like what the minimum wage is going to be. Of course, that's governed in part for many employers by federal law as well. But we have a state minimum wage. And this bill says it applies statewide, and no city or county can change it, raise it, lower it. We set it in Charleston. The state government sets it for the entire state. And we're not going to have a minimum wage in Martinsburg that's different from the minimum wage in Shepherdstown. Same with leave, other labor-related things. This bill does completely preempt municipalities or counties from setting their own licensure standards for professions that are already licensed and regulated by the state. And so, we have a state medical board that licenses physicians. Once they're licensed by the state board, they get to practice medicine anywhere within the state of West Virginia. And the city of Morgantown, the city of Huntington cannot say, oh no, wait, we have additional requirements here. The fact that you've been granted a license by the West Virginia Medical Board is not sufficient here. You have to take another test, or we have other requirements. This preempts that. We have a state certification program for school teachers. You have to be a certified teacher to teach in the public schools of the state. This bill says, let's be clear about what it says. It says the city of Kingwood, the city of Fayetteville cannot establish its own different requirements for teacher licensure. Sorry, you're a West Virginia certified teacher, but you can't teach in this town or this county because you haven't met our additional certification requirements under some ordinance we passed. This bill preempts those. So let's be clear about what we're voting, what the bill will do when we vote for or against it, and we consider it. It does not touch at all upon any of the smoke-free clean air ordinances that have been passed by any health department or city. It completely preempts municipalities and counties from passing regulations that relate to minimum wage, labor issues, professional licensure. And I think that's good policy, Mr. President. I'm happy to support this. I think those, as the findings in the bill indicate, if we're going to have 55 different minimum wages in West Virginia, county by county, or 155, with every municipality being able to set its own minimum wage, it will create, as the findings suggest, a burden on employers and an unworkable patchwork of regulations throughout the state. This bill requires uniformity in those areas. I believe it's good policy, and I urge its passage.
Question before the Senate, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? As so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 20 yeas, 13 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has the title amendment.
Senator Weld moved to amend the title of the bill.
The question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 391 relating to study of child protective services and foster care workforce. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a short, simple bill. Basically, what this bill does, it requires DHR to conduct a study and make recommendations for ensuring the healthy developmental child welfare services and foster care workforce. The bill sets forth the items that shall be included in the study, and these items include an evaluation of the workload for caseworkers to ensure caseworkers have manageable workloads to achieve positive outcomes for the children and families they serve, a determination of whether factors such as child population and poverty rate should be incorporated into the analysis for allocating caseworkers across the state, and lastly, a survey of the salaries and benefits in neighboring states. The results of this study conducted by DHR shall be reported to LACRA by July 1st, 2022. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Boone.
President, I also rise in support of this bill. We've tried in the past to provide wraparound services. A lot of cases, that's what we're talking about, wraparound services with counseling, et cetera, et cetera. The problem is West Virginia has not funded or paid these counselors money to make it an attractive career opportunity. So we're going to find out that there's shortages, severe shortages. But the problem is, again, a survey of the salaries and benefits in neighboring states. I think that's going to be a real eye-opener for us, and urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 431 relating to school attendance notification requirements to DMV. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill allows the Division of Motor Vehicles to accept from the Department of Education electronic notice of a student's compliance with the attendance provisions in lieu of a paper notice. The committee substitute replaces Department of Education with a County Board of Education and amends the title. I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 31 yeas, 2 nays, 1 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 502, providing lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping license to residents, adopted, and foster children under 15. Third reading of the bill.
The question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 502 would allow residents of the state who have not reached their 15th birthday to be eligible to receive their lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping license. The bill proposes a new fee schedule for residents under the age of 15. It kind of has a titration schedule that it gets a little more expensive as you get older. Finally, the adopted children and foster children under the age of 15 would also be eligible for the licenses under this bill and would be treated as if their birthday were at the time of the fostering or the time of their adoption. So it's a very good bill for adopted children and foster children. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? If not, question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than a majority having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective from passage and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Senior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective from passage and requests unanimous consent that the roll call used on the passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than 2/3 of those elected to the Senate having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective from passage. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2008, amending requirements for licensure relating to elevator mechanics, crane operators, HVAC, electricians, and plumbers. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senior Senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2008 modifies requirements for licensure or certification for various trades. The bill substitutes OSHA certification for crane operators for West Virginia licensure and authorizes the Commissioner of the Division of Labor to enter into a cooperative agreement with OSHA that will allow the Division of Labor to use federal funds for training and certification efforts. The bill also modifies licensing requirements for plumbers, HVAC techs, electricians, and fire protection work such as sprinkler fitters. Criminal penalties for working without a license are removed, but all civil penalties and fines remain as already established in the current code. The Division of Labor supports that change. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge passage of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Senator yield?
Would the Senator yield? The Senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator. Just got some questions for you. I'm not on the committee that dealt with this. I heard some of the questions yesterday, and I was a little bit confused. Was the Department of Labor involved in the crafting of this bill?
We initially didn't ask them, but we did get their blessing on something that was mentioned there at the end with the criminal penalties and the civil penalties remaining.
Okay, I'm sorry. You said initially, but then you said you did get their blessing later. So they weren't involved initially?
When the idea came about, we didn't go to them and say, hey, would this work? We crafted the legislation and then let them weigh in on it. As far as the way I understand it, it started in the House.
Okay. What about the particular piece on crane certification? Did y'all talk to them about that piece?
The way I understand it, this adopts a national certification and doesn't require it just to be the one that's in the state. So it actually ups the standards to national certification that was arranged through OSHA.
Okay, so your understanding is it ups certification to federal levels. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and it makes it more standardized.
Okay. So you think this keeps us aligned with federal law? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Did you check with OSHA or the Department of Labor about that?
I didn't, but I'm sure the House did. I'll speak with counsel. They've definitely had the opportunity to weigh in, and as far as I know, they haven't, expressed a concern one way or the other.
I think your lawyer wants to talk to you.
The Division of Labor Council tells me actually appreciated the part with updating it to the OSHA standards and the federal requirements.
That's interesting. It's my understanding in checking with them that the Commissioner of Labor cannot enter into an agreement on crane certification with OSHA. That's not allowed. So you just haven't checked on that?
Council explains to me that they were okay and wanted the update to the federal certification.
Okay, well, I would suggest you get in touch with them because it's my understanding they can't do that. So just to move on to a couple other issues, though. Talking a little bit about crane operators, because this is way outside my wheelhouse. Do you have any idea how often that they are cited for not having proper certification?
I do not have those numbers.
Okay. It's my understanding, I didn't have any idea either, and so I did a little research, and what I found was it's an average of 23 times a year over the past 5 years. Does that sound reasonable to you?
It does.
Okay. What are the potential consequences if somebody's running a crane and they're not certified, they don't know what they're doing? What are the potential consequences of that?
To me, if OSHA is now involved and we're adopting their standards, I would think 23 would be reduced in the next 5 years. My opinion.
Okay, I hear you. But did you, I guess I'm wondering if you heard me before. It's my understanding Commissioner of Labor cannot enter into an agreement with OSHA on crane certification. So I do not think we're going to be able to do that.
We have not heard that argument.
Okay, well, again, I just suggest you maybe have that conversation with them. Seems to me that in terms of that question before, that the potential consequences are public safety. If we're having 23 incidents a year. All right, but I'll move on to something else. There was an incident down in my region, not far from yours, in Raleigh County that I've read about. I remember seeing a newspaper, a television news station report on. There was a plumber in Raleigh County, had a couple different plumbing businesses. He was not licensed. He was unlicensed. He had several jobs where he charged folks, promised work, left them high and dry, didn't ever finish those jobs. And it's my understanding that the police investigation relied completely on his lack of licensure to be able to charge and prosecute him. And so without that, they wouldn't have had any recourse to try and help those folks that he had wronged. It's my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, this bill would decriminalize work without a license. Are you concerned about a situation like that happened in Raleigh County, potentially happening on a larger scale across the state?
I can't understand why anybody that would perform inadequate work with negligence involved, why that they would not be cited, the plaintiff would not be cited in favor of to receive justification.
Well, I'm just relying on the reporting, which cited law enforcement as saying we were able to get this guy because he didn't have a license. And if he didn't have a license...
I'm not an attorney, but if someone performs inequitable work, the plaintiff would still be allowed due process of law and be able to litigate that case in the same manner.
Okay, I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you. May I speak to the bill, Mr. President?
Proceed.
Just very briefly, this is another cut and paste bill, which was not written in West Virginia with the input of West Virginians for West Virginia businesses. It is out of compliance with federal law. It takes away local control. It compromises public safety. It takes tools away from law enforcement and able to keep them from being able to go after bad actors. And so for all these reasons, this bill is bad for business, and I urge rejection of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Marion?
Chairman, continue to yield, please.
Senator yield. The senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One particular part of this bill that I want to talk about that gives me great concern is the fire damper provision. Did you consult, or did your committee consult with the fire marshal when crafting this bill and eliminating the fire damper license?
My committee did not craft this bill. It came from the House.
When we did, I think we did a committee sub, didn't we? Or a strike and insert?
Yes, strike and insert.
Okay, when crafting the strike and insert, did we have any discussions with the fire marshal regarding the fire damper provision in this bill?
They were, as far as I know, in the committee there to accept questions, and many were placed from the committee members.
So you had no discussion with him in the crafting of the strike and insert, if I'm hearing you correctly. I was in the committee. I remember talking to him. I'm asking if we asked for his advice when doing the strike and insert.
The only thing that we changed on the way it came from the House was actually strengthen restrictions on sprinkler fitters.
Okay, I think I got my answer, but I just want to speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Proceed.
Mr. President, I'm concerned about several provisions in this bill. I think it really hurts the trades, and it's going to produce a poor quality of work for us in West Virginia. I'm very concerned about it. But one thing I'm extremely concerned about is the provision that eliminates the fire damper license. The fire marshal testified before our committee, that he was not consulted by anyone in the crafting of this bill. When he said anyone, I'm assuming he meant our colleagues across the hall and us. But that was his testimony. And he was deeply concerned about this as well. He talked about, or I asked him about, an incident that I'd heard about right here in Kanawha County, where fire dampers were installed improperly by non-certified, non-licensed individuals. And it was done at a dementia nursing home at the crossings at South Ridge. And there was 100 violations of improper work. Now, I want you to think about this. I didn't even know what the heck a fire damper was. I didn't know what it did. But when we go into hospitals and we go into colleges and other institutions, maybe where we have our loved ones in a nursing home or an assisted living home, we hope that everything was done properly in the event of a fire, that they would be protected as much as they possibly could. And that's what fire dampers do, Mr. President, from my understanding, and I'm sure you probably have a better understanding than I do. But it contains the smoke from moving from room to room, contains the fire, and allows people time to save lives of our loved ones. And we have eliminated that. And the fire marshal's not happy about that. The people that install these are not happy about that. I can't figure out who wants it. I mean, on these three bills that's stripping licenses, I had my secretary keep a running total of the calls and letters and emails that I received on this. And we received over 300, and I know it's probably way more than that, that was a few days ago, people that asked me to vote no on these pieces of legislation. And we received 2 that asked me to vote for it. I don't know who one of them was, but the other one was a gentleman from Americans for Prosperity. Not sure why he is so involved in this, but he is. But point being made, Mr. President, 2 people out of over 300 people asked me to vote for this piece of legislation. You know, I trust my friends in the building trades. I think they're true American craftsmen who deeply care about the work they do and deeply care about protecting the lives of West Virginians. They think it's a horrible idea. So I think it's a horrible idea as well. I'm perplexed as why we would not consult with experts right here in the state of West Virginia that we have at our fingertips that work for the people of West Virginia, such as the fire marshal, and bring him or her in and say, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? No, we just take this idea that was cookie cut from some think tank and we run with it. It just doesn't make good sense to me, Mr. President. I would strongly urge a no vote on this piece of legislation.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in opposition to House Bill 2008, and it's problematic for a number of reasons. I want to focus my comments on the opportunity that it creates for unqualified electricians to do work in our state, some of whom are not here lawfully in the United States. For those of you who aren't aware, there have been multiple incidents here in the state of people who have come here to Kanawha County to take the electrician licensing exam. And they lied about their employment history when they applied to take the exam. They lied about their identities when they applied to take the exam. We also are aware of multiple incidents where unqualified and illegal workers have been found on work sites by investigators with the State Fire Marshal's Office. Let me talk about a few of those for just a moment here. And we learned about this, a lot of this, Mr. President, during your committee meeting on government organization last week. And as the senator from Marion said, we heard from the State Fire Marshal, and he came in and testified about multiple incidents, including incidents where on one occasion here in Kanawha County, they arrested 13 people who misidentified who they were, misidentified their work histories, and they were trying to take the test to become an electrician. There was a separate incident where 3 individuals were arrested for doing the same exact thing. When they worked with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, they learned that these individuals were not here in the United States lawfully. When asked, and this is Marshal Tyree, when he was asked whether or not he's concerned about the part of the bill that would eliminate the requirement that an assistant electrician must have a license, he said that will make it more difficult to monitor and enforce and execute the laws of this state. And he also said it's going to make it easier for individuals who aren't in the United States legally to remain undetected. I did some more checking, Mr. President, about maybe incidents like this that occurred in my district, and I came across an incident that occurred in Marshall County. And there are a few other senators on this floor who represent Marshall County with me, and I've got the citations in my hand of an incident that occurred at the Chevron compressor station in Marshall County, West Virginia. Natural gas is a pretty big deal in my district, as you all know. And if you don't know what a compressor station does, I've driven by them. They're pretty massive pieces of equipment. If you don't know what they are, they help to make sure that natural gas can flow through a pipeline. It's highly pressurized. They need to have a turbine, a motor, or an engine to make sure that that keeps running 24/7. Pretty important piece of equipment. Well, state fire marshals went to a site there in Marshall County and arrested 5 individuals who were working on electrical matters who did not have a license. None of them were in the United States lawfully. Whether they were qualified or not, we'll never know because they didn't have a license to do the work that they were there performing. Make no mistake, Mr. President, I'm for comprehensive immigration reform. I want people to find a path to get here to our country
legally, but rules are rules. And we are making it harder for our officials, particularly with the State Fire Marshal's Office, to enforce the rules when we water down the requirements for licensing. And that's exactly what we heard from the mouth of the State Fire Marshal during GovOrg last week. This bill, if you vote yes for this bill, you are going to create situations like the one in Marshall County where we have unqualified or underqualified workers working on compressor stations. You're going to allow them to engage in work they're not qualified to do. You're going to place our citizens' safety in jeopardy, whether they're workers on the site or people within miles of that compressor station. And you're also going to take jobs from West Virginia workers by watering down these requirements. And for all those reasons, Mr. President, I urge a no vote.
Is there further discussion? Junior Senator from the 8th.
Yes, Mr. President. I wasn't planning to speak in opposition to this bill, but I feel compelled to do so to the extent the hubris involved in crafting a bill, putting it before government org, and placing it on this body and saying, well, I thought the House was going to take care of stakeholders and getting input from them. We do have a personal responsibility and duty to talk to just about every individual that a piece of legislation impacts. Here it's pretty specific. It goes to licensure. It goes to the health and safety of West Virginians. The folks that did testify on this bill in committee was predominantly in opposition, and they said to a T that it would impact the health and safety of West Virginians. In defense of this bill on the amendment stage yesterday, the argument was made that, well, we need to follow policies that allow people to earn a living and take care of themselves and their families. Well, no one's against that, but these folks are professionals. I don't hear anyone saying we should lower the qualifications for our MDs and DOs because it will create more doctors so they can take care of their families. We need to be careful about where we're treading. And when the entire group of people who are in opposition, the people who are impacted by this bill, say this isn't a good bill, it's incumbent upon us to listen to them, to take their views into consideration. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excuse me. Would the senator from...
Will the senator yield? The senator yields.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just briefly go over a couple of parts on this legislation that I just want to make sure that everyone understands, and I understand how to be able to obtain a license, and I specifically want to focus on a plumber. Can you explain to me and to this body how a person can become a journeyman plumber?
I don't have those notes in front of me, but hang on just a second. Currently, it's required to have 8,000 hours, but under the way the bill is, they're required to pass an exam and make a 70% on it to become a journeyman.
Okay.
And that's the step below the, the master plumber.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the master plumber. How does a person become a master plumber?
You have to pass the master plumber examination, and you have to have 1 year experience as a journeyman plumber, the way the bill writes.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the master plumber, and I don't see where the word experience is in that language. It looks like to me that everything that has to do with the plumber, when it comes to experience, everything was removed. So I don't see 1 year experience and help me if I'm wrong.
The actual word experience may not be in there, but you have to serve as a journeyman plumber 1 year, So that would be the same thing. And I don't have the language in front of me. The council's looking right now.
Mr. Chairman, I really don't believe that means the same thing. I read the language and it says that for a journeyman plumber that all he has to do is pass a written examination of a 70%. If I remember right in school, I think that was a D, maybe.
That's good.
So that's a little bit concerning me, but I think it also says that to become a master plumber, that all I have to do is hold the journeyman license for 1 year, and then I can take the written exam for the master plumber.
That's not a quote, but that's basically what the code says here.
Okay, all right. So we can become a journeyman plumber, score a 70% on a written exam with no experience at all, and become a journeyman plumber, hold that position, not work anywhere at all, do anything at all. 1 year later, I can go and take the examination to become a master plumber, score another 70% on it. Does that concern you any? Does that not concern you any at all? Not having no experience at all?
Well, it doesn't say that the person would not have any experience, and the master plumber, is an increased knowledge test as compared to the journeyman plumber.
I don't disagree with that. I agree that the master plumber should be a little bit more stringent exam, but it's the experience that I'm trying to get at is why are we removing the experience level to become either a journeyman plumber or a master plumber? Mr. Chairman, let me ask you this. So when this strike and insert was put in place, was there any consultation at all with the Commissioner of Labor that are there some problems, are there some issues there that people are having a hard time becoming a journeyman plumber or a master plumber?
The only thing we changed in the strike insert was on sprinkler fitters, and it actually required more, I think, a combination of more hours requirements. So we didn't think we'd need to say, hey, do you all think it's okay to increase the amount of hours on a sprinkler fitter? And that's the only change we made to it.
Let me go back to what I just asked you. Was there any consultation with the Commissioner of Labor that there has been a problem trying for people to try to achieve and become a journeyman plumber or a master plumber?
Well, I will say they didn't come to me stating any resistance to this, and I was not asked for any stakeholder meetings. Anyone that came to me with issues, we would talk about it and address their concerns, and I would have welcomed a stakeholder meeting. I've been a part of many stakeholder meetings.
So there was a stakeholder meeting?
I said I would have welcomed a stakeholders meeting. I was contacted by individuals with concerns, and we were addressed individually, but I was not contacted by the Division of Labor, but I would have welcomed that comment as well. Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, let me ask you this. There's another agency within the government called Workforce. Was Workforce contacted about these changes that were going to be made? Like I say, the way the bill came from the House, they'd already, it'd been in the system for many days, and I didn't pick up the phone and call Workforce and say, hey, are you okay with this? But I did entertain all questions and issues that individuals had with the bill, and council worked with them and addressed their concerns, and that's the reason the strike and insert is a little different than it came from the House.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would think that if we did this, if the strike and insert was done in government organization, I would have thought that a number of the changes that, whether they were made from the House or here, that we would have looked deeper into it to make sure that these changes are not going to have any effect, first of all, upon public safety, and also upon the West Virginia residents and the business owners. And that's why I'm asking you about workforce. Did you reach out to workforce and consult with them about some of these changes that were going to be made?
We did look deeply. We thoroughly vetted the bill, did everything that we thought would affect any certain group, and took their comments, and our doors were open to workforce if they had any issues. I've not heard workforce's name mentioned one time in relation to this bill, and I think it's the duty upon our body, if they have an issue or think that workforce may have an issue, call workforce. Say, contact the senior senator from the 6th. Let them know your concerns. Let's get this in a group and talk about it. I don't think they would have any concerns, but I am available, and our committee is available to discuss those.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your answer, but I really feel like that any time that there's any policy changes to be made within this body here, the affected areas in code that's going to be changed, that all agencies should be reached out to, and let them be aware, if there is an issue, let them be aware of the changes that could be coming. Mr. Chairman, I did reach out to workforce, and they was not consulted at all. And here's where I have a concern with that.
You're recognized for questions, Senator. You're recognized for questions.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak to the bill?
You can speak to the bill.
Mr. President, here's another bill that I don't know what the problem is. I've had a number of agencies that have contacted me that normally would not be contacting me, that are flat against this piece of legislation. They see problems with it. They see problems in the future with it. Mr. Chairman, I did reach out to workforce, and I asked them if they were contacted. And the reason I reached out to them is because I know that there are businesses out there that reach out to workforce to ask for people, for employees, to be able to come and do work at their facilities, at their places. Mr. President, what's going to happen is now we're going to have a business that's going to reach out to workforce. I'm just going to use a plumber, for instance. He's going to ask for a journeyman plumber, and it could be my wife who went and took that exam, and they have to send her because she's classified as a journeyman plumber. Mr. President, that's not good business for West Virginia. I've always believed in experience. I've always believed in training to be able to call yourself a journeyman, whatever trade it may be. I can remember one time before I became a carpenter, I can remember I was working at a school, and there was a door slab laying there that had to be trimmed down. I grabbed a hold of that planer, went down that door, and I destroyed a $2,000 door because I didn't have the experience and I didn't have the training. Mr. President, I don't see why we would be passing legislation that is lowering our standards here in West Virginia. We should be lifting up, helping people to get the training that they need so they can be able to hold their head up and say, I am a master at this. Mr. President, I urge rejection of House Bill 2008. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Harrison.
Mr. President, I have to draw out one more point on this bill. Not only are we abandoning our citizens, our senior citizens, our homeowners, people who rent, from knowing whether or not they are engaging qualified people to do such jobs as electrical work, plumbing work, and the like. But the previous bill which forbids counties and municipalities from setting standards for people they have to hire, will require them to take the lowest bid for companies that are going to use people that aren't trained, people that can call themselves electricians, elevator mechanics, fire damper technicians, and they'll have to take them because they'll be required to take the lowest bid. Look, I think this bill's ridiculous. I don't think it's been well thought out. I don't think it's been adequately vetted. It should be returned to the committee for further work. But if we pass this, how many other bills are to follow? Am I going to be able to perform a catheterization because no medical requirements are placed on physicians? It may sound ludicrous, but when you think about somebody working on your elevator or working on your electrical system in a county building, in a school, in any other public place, we're taking the same risk. I urge a no vote on this bill, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion before I recognize the senior senator from the 6th to close? Senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to start off with the comments that's been made and address you in those concerns. Senator Marion mentioned the nursing home with the fire dampers that was inspected by the fire marshal and found a flaw with the current licensing requirements that are in effect. So the fire marshal does not change. His responsibility is not changing in this bill. He will still be inspecting those fire dampers and finding the problems just the same as he did before. The senator from Ohio raised some issues with electricians. The state fire marshal issues those licenses and still has the ability to address the illegal immigrant status and has the same ability to address the concerns as he does currently now or after the bill becomes law. An HVAC license is still in effect, and it requires fire damper knowledge and is in the test. It's a redundant test that you have a fire damper test and an HVAC test. This basically just takes it down to the HVAC test, which still requires fire damper knowledge. With the concern from the senator from Putnam and kind of accusing my committee of not having proper meetings, I have 100% faith in my council to address all concerns and bring everyone in the committee that is necessary. Many times if it's not someone that's in favor of what the bill is before us, he will contact the agencies that are affected and bring them in. And I have faith in him, and he will do the right thing and bring all interested parties in with state agencies. Also, the senator from Putnam mentioned the plumbers and the issues. All the catch nets of the contracts that are in place for any type of job like he mentioned will still be there. This is basically a workforce participation bill. Our workforce participation is so low in this state, Mr. President, and we're looking to do anything we can to improve that. It's a jobs bill. I think if we can feed one more family by making this piece of legislation be in our state code, then it's a good thing. I see no safety concerns. I hear their arguments, but I hope I've addressed them all, and it's a good bill, and I urge passage.
Question for the senator. Shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Oops. You know, man. Senior senator from the 5th, what purpose are you?
Requesting unanimous consent to address the Senate.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I reluctantly do this in this way because, unfortunately, sometimes you have to leave the body for various reasons, and I had to, and I apologize.
And I reluctantly like to talk about something that I think is a controversial thing, and we have something here. But, Mr. President, the Senator from Morgan talked about a livability, and I'm very concerned with livability in this state right now. When you have businesses that have been contacting me, corporations have been contacting me, the Home Builders Association, different groups have been contacting me regarding the aspects that would be in House Bill 2008. In the Bible, there's a phrase or a word that says Selah. That's for you to pause. It's in the Hebrew Bible, it's in the King James Version, it's in the Bible. And it says, pause and think about what you're doing. Pause for a moment and think. And I ask you, pause and think about what we're doing. We're talking about the health and safety of our citizens. You're not going to find out what we're doing right now in 2 minutes from now. It'll be 2 to 3 years from now when we have a fire because we don't have trained electricians that are in a building, a school building, in a household, because we're not requiring the training. We're supposed to be preventive. We're supposed to prevent what's happening here in this group. And this bill does not do that. Thank you.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there will be 17 yeas, 16 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than those present having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. The clerk has a title amendment.
Committee on Government Organization moved to amend the title of the bill.
The question is on adoption of the title amendment. All those in favor will say aye. Excuse me. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the title amendment adopted. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2013 relating to the Hope Scholarship Program. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 2013 creates a Hope Scholarship Program. It provides for funding of Hope Scholarships. It defines terms, one of which is a definition for eligible recipient, which means a child who is enrolled, who is a resident of the state, is enrolled full-time and attending a public elementary or secondary school program in this state for at least 45 calendar days during an instructional term at the time of application and until an award letter is issued by the board, or is enrolled full-time in a public elementary or secondary school program in this state for the entire instructional term the previous year, or is eligible at the time of application to enroll in a kindergarten program. However, if on July 1, 2024, the participation rate in the Hope Scholarship Program during the previous school year is less than 5%, then effective July 1, 2026, the program is open to all school-age children. This creates the West Virginia Hope Scholarship Board to administer the program. It requires the Hope Scholarship Program to be operational no later than July 1, 2022. It requires the board to make the applications available by March 1st, 2022. It creates the West Virginia Hope Scholarship Program Fund to be administered by the treasurer. It provides a process for closing an account and returning the remaining funds to the state. It sets forth a list of qualifying expenses, which are the expenses for which a Hope Scholarship Fund can be used. It provides that the recipient remains eligible until certain conditions are met or not met. It requires the board to implement a system for payment of services from Hope Scholarship accounts and allows the board to propose legislative rules, including emergency rules if necessary. It requires the board to conduct or contract for the random auditing of individual accounts. It allows the board to conduct or contract for the audit of education service providers accepting payments from Hope Scholarship accounts. It sets forth specific requirements applicable in order for an education service provider to be eligible to accept payments from a Hope Scholarship account. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I urge adoption.
Question before the Senate is passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Chair recognizes the junior senator from the 8th.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator from Jefferson and Chairwoman yield?
Well, Senator yields. Senator yields.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I'm sorry, what?
I said Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
All right. I wasn't able to, I don't sit on education or finance, so if I could just ask a couple questions for my own edification. First off, I know it's labeled as a scholarship, but it's a voucher to the extent that it can be used for non-public schools, whether it's homeschool, private school, or public charter school, correct?
Okay, so I'm not sure if that makes it a voucher or not. It is a account that would be open in that student's name that the treasurer would oversee, and those funds can be used to provide the educational needs of that student wherever they find that need to be met.
What's the amount of the voucher?
It is 100% of the state aid average, which based on last year's calculations, and we're always a year behind when it comes to funding, it is going to be $4,600.
Is that for the year or for a semester?
That is for the year. That is the full amount that would be put into the Hope Scholarship account yearly, but that amount can change because it's 100% of the state aid average, and the state aid average, what we fund the schools, can change year to year.
And is there any cap? Let's say you have a family of, you have 3 children. Can each child get the maximum $4,600, or is it capped to only 2 children or 1 child of a family?
There is no limit on the number of children in a family, but there is, of course, the eligibility limits. So you have to be an eligible student. So those 3, children would have to be eligible to be enrolled in kindergarten, or they will have had to be in the public school the year before, or they will have to be enrolled and attending a public school for a minimum of 45 days before they could apply.
And that voucher of around $4,600 that's public funds, correct?
That is the state portion of funding that we do for students. And of course, there are some who would argue it is a portion of that family's state tax dollars.
Okay. It's public funding, isn't it?
It is the funding that we set aside to educate our kids in West Virginia, yes.
Exactly. It's the $4,600 that would have gone to the public school that now follows to whatever school that the child goes to in order to get that voucher, correct?
Well, whatever educational choice they decide is best for their kids, yes.
Sure, I just want to make sure that we're all clear. I mean, we all pay taxes, but that $4,600 is not from the family itself, it's from everyone from the state of West Virginia, right?
It is the state aid portion that we provide per student.
Sure. And that state aid, that state money, those public dollars can go to, say, a private school that discriminates on the basis of sexual orientation, correct?
I do not know that any of those private schools exist, but yes, it can be used at a qualified private school. There are qualifications in the bill for those schools. We call them education service providers that they must meet, and they must be approved. It is going to have to be an approved education service provider that the treasurer has on, that's going to be made available to the public. There will be a list.
Sure, I'm aware of at least one school, one private school in this state, that as far as the criteria for students, one of those criteria is sexual orientation. So I think you've answered the question. That's public money that will go to potentially a school that discriminates on the basis of sexual orientation, correct?
Potentially if they fit the criteria and they're approved.
So I'm right.
Yes, if they fit the criteria and they're approved.
And when you're talking criteria, you're talking about the students, right?
There is criteria for education service providers in the bill.
Well, there's no criteria with regard to sexual orientation, is there?
The funds
for the ESPs.
The funds follow the student, so the money and the accounts are open in the student's name for the student's educational needs.
All right. I thank you for your time.
No problem.
Madam Chairwoman. Mr. President, I'd like to take this opportunity to speak to the bill.
Senator may proceed.
I'm not going to belabor this point because I think the testimony from the senator from Jefferson and the comments from the senator from Jefferson makes clear. I just want to make sure that we all understand what this bill does. This bill would allow public dollars to support a private institution that discriminates on the basis of sexual orientation over education. Let that sink in a bit. It's something that is fundamental to each of us, something that is important to each of us. Our public dollars support that type of discrimination. I can't imagine anyone, at least in the 21st century, that would support such a system or such a consequence of this particular piece of legislation. I could go on that particular point. But we talk a lot about, in West Virginia, retaining folks in our state and bringing people to our state. And now, should this bill pass, should this bill become law, we can say, welcome to West Virginia. Your public dollars will support discrimination. I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Mason County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not anticipating to speak to this bill until today. And as a public educator and a mother of 3, I decided that I needed to. I wasn't really sure how I was going to go on this bill. I wasn't certain. I was back and forth several times because I can debate both sides all day and probably win the debate with things that I've been told and things that I feel and things that I know. So as with everything, I like to think about making sure that I make the right vote and I do the right thing. And so I prayed for clarity on that. And that clarity came to me in the form of a memory of a student that I had. A few years back, and I won't say how many years because I don't want to give away my age. Several people in here think I'm younger than what I actually am. But a few years back, I had a student in my classroom who was dyslexic. He struggled a lot. He had a good family life, a mom who really tried hard to help him. And she came to me and we figured it out. She took him down to Marshall University to get tested, figured out that he was dyslexic. So we went to our special education services within the county school system, and the special education services do not cover dyslexia, among other things. So we began our own process of trying to figure out how we could help this student, how she could help her son, and how I could help her. I adapted my classroom to do that. It took a lot of extra planning. It took a lot of extra time. It took a lot of collaboration with the mom, and we were successful that year. I passed on the information to the 5th grade students, or the 5th grade teacher. He tried to implement as best he could, but that student left our school, our little country school, where we try to make sure that we meet the needs of every student. I'm not saying that other schools don't, but I know what happens at our school. So I often wonder what happened to him as he moved on through bigger schools and people didn't really understand what he needed. And I thought about more students that could affect. And aside from pressure from people or groups or anything, to vote no on this bill, I really struggled with it because I could see both sides, but that clarity to me, thinking about that student and the difference that I made and the difference that something like this could make in his life and lives of students like him, makes me think twice. So I was looking up some information. This may be the longest floor speech I give all session, by the way. I'm certain that our friend from Harrison County is going to challenge me in a little while, but so just humor me for a few minutes. So I was looking up some information, and there are currently 5 states that have active ESA programs. There are 6 that offered it, but 1 doesn't offer right now. Amongst those 5 states, only 18,706 students actually participate in that. That's in 5 states. Out of those 5 states, almost 12,000 come from Florida. So almost 12,000 in Florida. So I was looking at some of those 5 states that are more like West Virginia, still bigger. North Carolina, 282 students participate in their ESA program. 282 in the whole state. 502 in Mississippi. 137 in Tennessee. You know, we know our public schools are underfunded. That's you know, I don't know that that'll ever be fixed. This is not a bill that's going to destroy or defund public education. Based on those numbers, West Virginia is not going to be over, what I want to say, we're not going to see an influx of people trying to use these ESAs. We're not going to see, that's not going to be a huge problem. So I think back to my student that I just talked about, and I think about students like him and how much this could help, and it could help parents to provide something for them. Maybe the school system can't, or maybe it's just not a good fit for them. So I want to think about doing what's right. And what's right is making sure that all of our students in West Virginia have a good quality education that's good for them. So I'm urging support of this bill and the passage of it. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Ohio.
Thank you. I want to address 2 key areas with regard to this bill, Mr. President. One is in regard to what I see as financial recklessness, and 2, the inequities of the bill. Let me start by talking about the financial piece to this, and we fleshed this out a little bit during the Finance Committee meeting the other day, and we had witnesses who testified about what this bill originally looked like and then what it turned into when there was an amendment offered in the House that remained in the bill when it came over here, and that I tried to get out through an amendment offered in Finance that failed. It's the Burkhammer amendment. He's a delegate, and he put in a provision that would take what might be say a $20 million program and potentially turn it into a $120 million program. And that number could grow year after year after year depending upon the level of participation. And that gives me a lot of concern because it, along with other bills that are moving through this building this session, to me, are bills that make it look like we've got so much money we don't know what to do with it. We've got money that's fallen out of our pockets here in West Virginia, and we can spend it here, we can spend it there, we can spend it everywhere. But that's not the case. I've looked at the budget numbers, I've looked at the out years, I've seen the budget deficits that are projected in 2023 and 24 and 25. Interestingly, when the governor put his plan out this year, he left out his 6-year outlook. That was an unusual thing to have happen. Typically, we get that outlook from him when he presents his budget. He didn't do that this year. It raised a red flag for me about why that wasn't in there. So I had to look back to prior years to see what the deficits are that are being projected. And it's not a pretty picture. I wish it was prettier. My point in saying all this is we can't be lulled into believing that the financial picture in the state of West Virginia is better than it really is. It's not. It's flat. Employment is flat. Revenue's flat. John Deskin stood on the other side of the building at the beginning of the session and said, we need an economic jolt to our economy if we're going to get things going. For all those reasons, I think we need to take a measured approach with a program like this. So I'm not standing up here in opposition to the concept of an ESA, which I know exists in a handful of other states. What I'm saying is that if we're going to go down this path, we should be careful. We shouldn't create a plan that potentially could cost more than we can afford here in West Virginia. So that's point number 1 on the financial recklessness of it. But what really bothers me about this bill is the inequities of the bill. And we heard a little bit about that a moment ago, the junior senator from the 8th. But we know that we have a school in our state right now that discriminates against children who are disabled. We know that. It also discriminates against those who are of a different sexual orientation than that preferred by the school's administrator. It's right on the website. It's right on the school's website. So I've preserved that in case it were to go away. Nothing in this bill, and I learned this through questioning of counsel at the Finance Committee, nothing in this bill prevents taxpayer dollars from going to that school. I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, happens to be a Republican. He said, "How's it going down there?" And I talked about this particular issue. I said, "We are getting ready to give taxpayer dollars to a school that discriminates against disabled children." He said, "What? What are you guys doing down there?" I said, "That's what we're talking about today. That's what's on the agenda. That's what's going to be voted on the Senate floor real soon." Sometimes we get down here and we get into this 60-day bubble and we lose touch with reality. We lose touch with what people on the outside think of what we're doing here. And that's why I always like taking the opportunity to talk to people who aren't down here, whether it's a friend, a relative, a work colleague, people down the street at my law firm. They want to know what's going on down here. Even though they're just down the street, they really don't know what's happening here because they don't live it like we do. But people are flabbergasted when they hear that particular point. Now, it makes me feel good about the citizens of our state. They have big hearts. They don't want to see that happen. But it also makes me concerned about what we're about to do here on the floor with this vote. Now, when I brought up these issues in finance, a defense was offered to these problems that were identified with discrimination. And the defense was IRS Form 5578. This was brought up to our Finance Committee. I had never heard of it. I had to look it up myself. Part of it was read to us in the committee, telling us what it does. And in short, it's a certification that every private school must sign, indicating that they will not engage in racial discrimination. I looked through the 4-page form for any reference at all to discrimination against those who are physically disabled, against those who might be of a particular sexual orientation, or any other prohibitions on discrimination. I couldn't find it anywhere in IRS Form 5578. So this did not give me any sort of satisfaction that this issue is being addressed. Mr. President, if we vote for this bill, we will be sanctioning the use of taxpayer dollars to be used to discriminate against physically disabled children. And I cannot, in good conscience, vote yes for a bill like that. And so when the clerk prepares the machine, I will be voting nay. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator from Raleigh County.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the appropriate time, I would like to seek a ruling on Senate Rule 43 concerning whether or not I should vote. House Bill 2013 attempts to give real hope to struggling children and to hurting families. That's what the bill is all about. It's an attempt to make a way of escape to children who, for whatever reason, are slipping through the cracks of the public education system. Every parent and every teacher knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's a relatively small remnant of children who, for any number of reasons, do not fit in with the one-size-fits-all approach to public education. This occurs in traditional private non-public schools too at times. I've lived in this type of world serving families for over 45 years. This bill gives hope and help to parents, grandparents, and guardians of K through 12 children by allowing them to give permission to an independent third-party management organization to use about 1/3 of the taxpayer money currently spent on educating a child in West Virginia. Under this bill, the county school system will continue to receive about 2/3 of the money allocated for that child, even though they won't have any cost, involvement, or responsibility in that child's education. Systems, in and of themselves, have no heart or soul. Therefore, they must be made accountable to those people whom they serve. Public educators and service personnel are also trapped in a system which unfortunately has developed into a top-heavy administrative hierarchy and central offices which live in denial of the need for reforms and often victimize the very employees and families they serve. Some in this chamber have followed the lead of their counterparts in the House by attempting to switch the narrative away from struggling children and hurting families. Since they hurled their accusations and questioned the motives behind House Bill 2013, it gives me the opportunity to address the obvious. And I will just address this body and tell you, these are my words. Nobody gave me these words. These are my personal words and thoughts. I have not been fed as I see people being fed what to read in contradicting bills. The critics of this legislation have positioned themselves against some of West Virginia's most vulnerable children, many of which come from low-income, special needs, and minority populations and desperately need an alternative method of educating their children. We've heard about the narrative switch to try to deal with the money. To those who are watching this, you should understand that in the worst-case scenario of the fiscal note of this legislation, they say it could be a cost of some $24 million. That comes to just a tad bit over 1% of the public education funding in West Virginia. 1% for struggling children and hurting families. And yet we have people standing up on this floor trying to deny these children the opportunity and these families the opportunity to educate their kids, and they only have a 13-year window to do it. Mr. President, every child is special. And every child has needs. And it is appropriate for our education system to help those who struggle, including the disabled, because somehow or another people are focused on one segment of the service providers, private schools. But they neglect to speak about the variety of service providers that can help these children with their particular needs, regardless of what their challenges are, whether they be physical, mental, emotional, or academic. Mr. President, if instructed to do so, I will proudly and decisively, with conviction, cast my vote to stand with and be a voice for the children and families locked into a system that is not addressing the educational and academic needs of their children. To try to defer and criticize and bring up some of these issues that some want to invoke in everything such as the discrimination topic, is irrelevant. We're talking about helping children, who they are, where they are, and what they need. And to try to defer into some other area is inappropriate in my opinion. I'd like to urge, or I'd like to inform teachers, service personnel, and support personnel that the Hope Scholarship will be available to you and your children if you happen to have a child that is slipping through the cracks of the system. You have help available to you, and I'm proud to inform you of that. I urge others to join me in supporting House Bill 2013. It is an imperfect bill. You can expect that there will be some tweaks that will come next session. However, what the House did with this and the challenges that they had with it being a second engrossment committee substitute that's sent to us, it's inappropriate for us to change it, and we can tweak it in the future. Senators, I want to remind you that your vote should be based upon what will be best for the children and the families in your district, and not let the straw man arguments sway you. And again, Mr. President, at the appropriate time, and this may be the appropriate time, to seek a ruling on Senate Rule 43.
In response to your inquiry, it's the ruling of the chair that you are a member of a class and shall not be excused from voting and shall vote on the bill. Is there further discussion? Senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations on the promotion today. Would the senator yield, please?
Will the senator yield? The senator does yield.
Thank you, Mr.
You may proceed.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator. You mentioned there a little bit ago, and you mentioned this in the Finance Committee as well. I think you've got about 45 years experience in administration in a private school here in West Virginia. Is that correct, sir?
It's 45 years total. I'm into my 33rd year here in West Virginia at the same school.
Okay, understood. My apologies. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask some questions since you're an expert in this area. Do most private schools here in West Virginia offer students breakfast and lunch programs? Does that generally occur sometimes, not always?
Well, the senator should probably understand that there's a difference between the two words private and public. Private schools are private, and therefore they operate in conjunction as an extension of the parents and the home. The parents and the home and the school determines that on an individual basis. And I would assume that there might be some that do and some that don't. But to try to go down the line of comparing the private school with the public school, I think is totally distraction.
Okay, so my question was about breakfast or lunch at schools. So you're saying maybe some do and some don't?
Most private schools that I know of do not participate in public funding whatsoever. They don't want the interference with all of the different challenges and hoops that they have to go through for that funding for breakfast, lunch programs, that sort of thing.
Okay, I was going to ask you some other questions, but that was interesting. You said most private schools don't want funding and the strings that come with that. Well, doesn't this bill provide funding, and won't there be strings that come with that?
This bill is not funding that will come directly from the state to the school or the private provider. This school goes through a management organization, so it is coming from the child, the parent, to the school. It is not coming straight from the government. That is what a voucher program is, if you want a definition. Vouchers go directly to the school.
I'm failing to see the distinction. It's taxpayer money that the school would be receiving, isn't it?
Well, I don't think it's hard to understand that, but I'll break it down a little bit further. The money goes into an education management organization designated by the Secretary of Treasury in West Virginia. That money is held in that account in the name of that child, and then for appropriate expenses, the parent may request that that management organization releases funds to whoever the service provider is. It could be an individual. It could be a small group. It could be some business, or it could be a private school.
Okay, but they are public funds. Correct?
What is public funds?
The Hope Scholarship, public funds.
The ESA account is in the name of the child. They are those funds that are distributed to that account in the name of the child. It's the money following the child.
Right, the public funds. Okay, well, just a couple other questions. Transportation programs, do private schools generally offer transportation programs?
Some do, some don't, and I will tell you that some of the counties in the state reimburse families that have children in private schools. They send them an annual check or a monthly check. As I understand it, ours does not. I've never seen any of that, but they send it to the families if they don't use public transportation. But I believe, as I understand it, this is not about the bill, but public transportation to and from school is something that private school students, all of them, are eligible for in some way or another, is my understanding.
Okay, so that varies as well. What about disabled students? Are disabled students generally accepted?
Basically, what you have is a federal guideline. I think it is, I want to say it's one of the titles, and I don't remember if it's Title II or Title IX, but I think it's Title II that says that there is an exemption for religious schools. So they would not have facilities in all of those places that are able to accommodate. Are there disabled students in private schools? Absolutely.
Okay. Well, does your school accept disabled students?
If you want to define disabled for me.
Well, I'll just read from your website. How about that? And we'll see.
Go ahead.
Okay. Prospective students who are physically challenged must be able to safely maneuver themselves without staff or student assistance, i.e. restroom, books, eating lunch, etc.
Right. That's what it is.
Okay, so a student...
So do we allow them to come to our school? Of course we can. And yes, we do. But they have to do certain things to be able to care for themselves. So is it wide open for every disabled student? We can't accommodate them.
Okay, so there's not complete access. You have to be able to provide a certain measure of, you have to be able to get yourself to the bathroom, for example. Is that what you're saying?
You read the statement.
I'm sorry?
You read the statement. That's exactly right.
Okay. Well, so that's not everybody. What about students who have an IEP, to use the public school language, or students with special needs? Are there any sort of general admission requirements if you have special needs or an IEP, to use that language?
Senator, let me go back to the difference between a public school and a private school. A private school has parents that bring the children to them and they ask, can you provide an education for my child? Every child is different and every child is unique. And the answer to your question is, if we feel like we can meet the needs of that child, then we are happy to have them. If your next question is, do we have IEP students? Of course we do. I don't know of any school that does not. And yes, our staff has to set up lesson plans. We have meetings. We have a guidance counselor, and the parents are all involved in all of that.
Okay. So what about a dyslexic student? You know, there's an example given before by the senator from Mason. If a dyslexic student came and sought admission, would that special need be a potential factor in determining if that student was admitted or not?
In my thinking back over the last 30 years, I can only think of one particular dyslexic student that went through our school, transferred from the public school to our school, and I think it was middle school years. It was called junior high back then. He transferred in. We helped him. He graduated from our school. He went into the military and served proudly our nation. So there's your answer. It has already happened. So does it happen? Of course it happens.
Okay.
Again, Senator, that has nothing to do with this bill, in my opinion. This is for the hurting children that are served by people you're focusing in and trying to pick at one little spot.
No, sir, I would disagree. Let me ask you another question. I mean, you said earlier in your speech that this bill gives, quote, I think I'll get the quote right, I wrote it down, real hope to struggling children who are slipping through the cracks of the public education system. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, good.
Struggling children and hurting families, if you want to be accurate.
Okay, thank you, sir. So, but you don't have to accept all those students. And you just said once in 30 years you've had a dyslexic student. So how is this bill going to help struggling families and students who are falling through the cracks of the education system if you don't have to take them in the first place?
Because you're going to have the children, the parents, the families that are hurting will have the option and the opportunity to find that help. That help may be a retired, certified public educator that doesn't want to go back into the system, but they can help, and maybe special education or whatever. They can be able to provide a service and help those children and those struggling children and those hurting families to be able to educate that child. That's a wonderful thing, and that's why I back this bill totally, even though it's got some things that I'd like to see adjusted.
Okay, so I hear you saying that the private school is probably not going to be an answer for a student in that situation. Is that right?
In what situation?
Well, when they have a special need that the private school doesn't have the ability to deal with.
A private school is no different than any other private entity that is designed for a certain clientele to be able to help. Now, that has nothing to do with a lot of the things that people indicate. We have a cross-section of all sorts of different people that attend the private schools in West Virginia.
Okay, do you limit access based on any other factors? Limit admissions, excuse me?
Limited admissions. I'm not sure where you're going at. Ask me and I'll answer.
Do you limit admission based on any other factors?
I don't have memorized what our admissions policy is, but there are admissions policies in a private school. That, again, Senator, is a difference between public and private.
Right, I understand, but under this bill, they both get public funds. So let me be a little more specific. According to your
student funds.
According to your website, quote, VBA is not equipped to accept problem.
Senator from Greenbrier County is recognized to ask the gentleman to yield to questions regarding the bill. I would just like to keep it confined to the legislation that we have before us.
Thank you. It is regarding the bill. So I was in the middle of quoting it. I'll start over, so I don't want to confuse the situation. VBA is not equipped to accept problem, married, or divorced students or those who will be 21 years of age by the time of graduation. So that's limiting admission to those certain students. Is that right?
Sounds like it to me.
Okay, so you limit admission to problem students? What is a problem student?
I don't know what our definition is there. It's a child who is having some
Senator
problems.
from Morgan County.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Senator may proceed.
Point of decorum. Questions that have been asked, some of them, have had an ad hominem flavor to them. And I rise to that point of order and decorum.
Senator's point is well taken, and I would say to the members that we will confine our questions to those regarding the legislation that we have before us and not any individual members and their outside experiences. The Senator from Greenbrier is recognized to ask questions of the Senator from Raleigh regarding the legislation.
Thank you. Sounds like I'm a problem student, so I'll speak to the bill. Thank you, Senator.
Senator may proceed.
There are 5 other states that have successful ESA programs. This is what it all boils down to. Those other successful programs are targeted to specific students. If our bill did that, I'd support it. It doesn't. This is the most open program in the nation. And the reason I'm asking these questions is because it speaks to the very nature of this bill that's before us in terms of those specific students that the Senator from Mason raised earlier will either benefit or not benefit from this. That's why those questions matter. This particular bill is not a targeted bill. It's wide open. So it doesn't target the aid towards the students who need it the most. A student who needs it the most could be denied admission in the first place because they're a problem student, because they're disabled, because they have a lifestyle that isn't agreed to by the folks who are admitting those students. The problem with this bill is that it doesn't do what it intends to do. We've got to target our aid towards the students who need it the most. Again, if this bill did it, I'd be right there. I've got a son who's in the same situation. This bill doesn't help those students, so I can't support it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there further discussion? If not, Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here we are again, deja vu. The voucher bill. We've got a new name for it, Hope Scholarship. But what's clear is that this is in a long line of bills that do nothing but defund public education. First, it was the charter schools that are going to take somewhere, if fully enrolled, around $400 million out of our public school system, but take any fraction of that you want, thousands of public school jobs. Here, another $30 million, and if we don't hit the 5% by 2024, another $70 million on top of that. If our teachers were the best paid, if we had the best facilities in public schools, maybe this would be okay. But we don't. We have the opposite. We've underfunded public education so much we saw 2 strikes in the last 4 years in order to get better pay for our educators and school service personnel. All added together, what the majority has passed is almost $500 million loss to public schools. Sure, we have catchy phrases, school choice, alternative education, let people's tax money go where they want to send their children. But we don't have a mandate to fund private schools. That's not our mandate. Public dollars go to public education. Our Constitution says that. And these are just tricks and smokescreens to get tax money out of public education and give it to for-profit education service associations or programs, whatever they're, providers, educational service providers. That's a neat name for for-profit companies. It's going to benefit private schools. It's going to put money in the pockets of the people who run them. Religious schools that discriminate against other religions will put money in their pocket. And what a slap in the face to our homeschoolers who take their kids to give them a good education at home. What do you think the incentive is now going to be to get your kid out of school to be able to take advantage of this. Most important that we're not thinking about, it's been brought up here several times today, is that we're going to allow public tax dollars to worm their way through a system and get to people who discriminate based on religion, race, nationality. Gentleman from Kanawha brought up sexual orientation. We've got kids who need to be educated regardless of the basis for discrimination, and most of all, physical disabilities. If this bill is supposed to help the kids that need it the most, why isn't it targeted just to those students? Mr. President, I'm not going to level any of my comments in the direction of anybody, but the people who are going to profit from this bill are not the students of West Virginia. There's a reason that there's a rush to get out of this state and not to come back in. I've never heard anybody move to a state because they had great private schools. They move to a state because they have great public school education. Employers bring their business here because there's educated students coming out of the public school system that can then receive training and go to work for them. Nobody's going to come here because of this bill, and what it's going to do, it's going to show us to be a backward state that doesn't care about the modern ideas of non-discrimination and inclusion, and instead continues on with an antiquated and prehistoric notion of who should receive benefits from our tax system and who should not. I urge a no vote to this bill.
Is there further discussion? Not, I'll recognize the Senator from Jefferson to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. So there's been a lot of debate and a lot of discussion. I want to at least clarify some of the things that were said, make sure we are all on the same page talking about the same thing, and that is what this bill does. So when it comes to funding, the way that the funding mechanism works, the treasurer sets up a fund, and that fund is going to be in the student's name. So when a student gets accepted into the Hope Scholarship, they create this fund. Money goes in to that fund based on what the 100% of the state aid average is, which can change every year. Half of the money will go in August, the other half will go in January. What the funds can be used for is going to be clear. We have in statutes some of the things that can be used for. If there are additional things that they might want to approve, it has to go through the Hope Scholarship Board, which is a 9-member board, including our state superintendent of schools, our chancellor of higher education, our state attorney general, our state auditor, our state treasurer. So it's got a lot of people who are going to be voting on these decisions. The education service providers who would like to participate in the program have to go through a process. First of all, there's criteria, and they have to meet that criteria. Then they have to go through a process in which the treasurer and the Hope Scholarship Board will approve them. There will be a list on the treasurer's website of approved vendors, education service providers. If a parent wants to use an education service provider that is not on that list, they're not going to be able to use the funds. They will have to ask that education service provider to go through the process of being approved. Once they're approved and on that list, the money will go directly to the education service provider for the service they're providing that student. There is no education service provider that will be mandated to participate in the Hope Scholarship. There will also be no parent who is going to participate in the Hope Scholarship who doesn't choose to do so, go through the process, have to have a student who is eligible. So I just want to point out, this is a program that is funding kids. It's not funding private schools. It's not funding education service providers. It is funding kids. And these are students, West Virginia taxpayers, and there could be a multitude of reasons of why they apply for a Hope Scholarship and why they are seeking this help. There were points made about the fact that this is not targeted to a certain demographic. I would like to say it's not limiting it to a certain demographic or a certain need. There are so many different needs in our state. We are the most broad-based. We are proposing to pass the most broad-based ESA. And I will tell you, I believe in having our kids be looked at as our kids. I don't want to call them by a name. I don't want to put them in a category. This isn't about a certain category. These are our kids. And if for some reason they're not getting what they need, we should be focusing on that, providing what they need. It is true that there are private schools in the state who are not providing everything that we provide in the public schools. That is absolutely true. But the reality is, the state aid average, which we are sending and are part of this Hope Scholarship, is a tiny fraction of what we send to our public schools to educate that student. It is very expensive. It is very expensive. It takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of help. I want to point out, because so many things were said about the financial recklessness and how much money we're spending. You know, this body increased its spending to public schools, Mr. President. We have increased our teachers' salaries. Do we need to do more? Absolutely. Can we do more? I sure hope so. But our commitment should be to get a good quality education for everyone. Everyone. So there was a lot of talk about the discrimination and the possibility that some might not be, accepted into some education service provider or a private school. I want to point out that all the private schools in the state have to follow state and federal applicable laws. If there is a desire to add to what they must do, we have in our state the West Virginia Human Rights Act, and we can amend that. We have that vehicle for adding to what would be our decision as a body. It would have to pass both houses in the bill, but we can decide that in that vehicle, not necessarily this vehicle that is talking about funding kids, making certain they have a good education. I will tell you, Mr. President, that I feel that our focus sometimes goes off track. We sometimes get distracted. We hear certain things said, and we try to label things. This legislation actually is open. It understands and accepts that there is a diversity in our state. It understands that people come from all walks of life. It contemplates that if that child is not being served, and it doesn't matter how much money the parents make, it doesn't matter what the child's particular demographic is, where they are in the state, it doesn't matter their background, it doesn't matter their ability. What matters in this legislation is you are not thriving and you are looking for help, and we are giving them an option they do not or may not currently have. We have students that move away from our state and we lose enrollment in our public schools, so they were public school students. We have students who already currently decide to homeschool, decide to private school. We know that there are folks who decide to move in a certain area, particularly because they want their child to be attending a certain public school. And there are areas of this state and public schools in this state that are a lot of a certain demographic. And I think we all know that. The reality is, some folks don't have the option of deciding where they can live. Some folks don't have the option to homeschool, to do a private school option. Some folks can't move out of the state. With this legislation, we embrace diversity and we fulfill our promise that to give every child in West Virginia access to the education that fits them best. I am grateful to support and cast my vote in support of every child in West Virginia today on this important legislation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk shall prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine to ascertain the results. On this question, 20 yeas, 13 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the actions of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2616, amended reporting to the governor and the legislature to have information continuously available on the Office of Health Facility Licensure and Certification's website. Third reading of the bill.
Question is on passage of the bill. Senator from Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill simply corrects terminology to reflect that the division administrating the program is the Office of Health Facility Licensure and Certification, and the director of the program is the director of the Office of Health Facility Licensure and Certification. With respect to the powers and duties of this section, the director may propose various rules and make available at all times through the OFLAC webpage information regarding the residential care community licensing and investigatory activities of the division. The bill removes the annual reporting requirement to the governor and to the legislature. Mr. President, I urge passage.
Question is on passage of the bill. Is there discussion? Senator from Boone.
Mr. President, would the senator yield, please?
Will the senator yield? The senator does yield.
With regard to placing the information on the website, is there a mechanism to update it, say go back 5 years, and then, you know, a lot of these folks may have something 10 years ago, but it looks pretty bad. Is there a mechanism to update that and keep this as an updated form?
Let me see if I can find out. That didn't come up in any of our discussions. Yeah, so OFLAC does this for other facility types. This is bringing this as like the last facility type to get into this new methodology. And yes, to answer your question, they can go back as far as they want.
So again, we're going to be putting on the total number of beds, the license type, the license number, the license expiration date, health investigations, information reports, life safety investigation, information reports, and whether those are residential care except Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, again, if you're a nursing home that 20 years ago you had some incidents or whatever, and now you've got new management, hired more people, et cetera, somebody goes on that website, they're going to see stuff from 20 years ago?
That's my understanding, Senator. This is not changing any of the rules or regulations, it's changing where the information is displayed.
Okay, thank you.
Is there further discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine to ascertain the results. On this question, 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting. More than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative. I declare the bill passed. The clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 562 relating to juvenile competency proceedings. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 566 relating to interpretations of school laws. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2372, allow pre-candidacy papers to be filed the day after the general election. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on the Judiciary moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to explain the committee amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judiciary Committee amendment is to a single section in the bill, and it's Section 5E in Article 8, and that's the Campaign Finance Law, Article 8's regulation and control of elections. And so the amendment really is simply designed to clarify what we think the intended purpose of the House bill was. But what it says is that an individual may file his or her pre-candidacy papers, etc., beginning on the day after the general election is held for the term of office immediately preceding the term of office for which the person may become a candidate. We think that clarifies it. What the purpose of the House bill is. I'd urge the adoption of the committee amendment.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is the adoption of the amendment offered by the Committee on the Judiciary. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be advanced to third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2682 relating to the issuance of license suspensions to insurance producers and insurance adjusters who have failed to meet continuing education requirements. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. Senator Azinger moved to amend the bill by striking out everything after the enacting clause.
Senator from Wood.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator from Wood.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is a strike and insert amendment that makes various stylistic and technical corrections and improvements, most of which are contained in the committee substitute for Senate Bill 493, which was reported to the Senate floor by the Senate Committee on Banking and Insurance last week and is the companion bill to the House bill. This is an amendment to an agency bill of the offices of the Insurance Commissioner, and its general counsel approved our corrections. I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there discussion? If not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment offered by the Senator from Wood. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
The bill will be advanced to third reading. Bills on first reading. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Senator from Marion.
Mr. President, I have an introduction. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Introduction.
Introduction?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go back to introduction of guests. Senator from Marion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. I got notice that a disability advocate in Marion County has been watching us today because of our Action on Disability Advocacy Day. Her name is Kathy Reed, and she spent her entire life advocating for those with disabilities to try to improve their lives. She has been coming down here every Disability Day, Mr. President, since I've been here. But due to the Capitol being closed, she could not attend today. But she is watching virtually. She's a wonderful lady who spends her life trying to improve the lives of others. And I would ask the Senate if they would give her a rousing round of applause. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further introduction of guest. Remarks by members. Junior Senator from the 8th.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've been here a long time today, and I enjoy the debate and fleshing out the issues, and I will be brief. Our children are many things, but there are also children. Our children are also disabled, and our children are also gay. So, objecting to a bill that puts public dollars behind entities that would discriminate on both those bases is not a straw man argument. It's a reasonable objection. And if it's an issue, we shouldn't wait a year from now to fix it. We should fix it now, which we failed to do. I just want to make that point, Mr. President. Thank you.
Further remarks by members. Miscellaneous business. Senior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Subject to announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until 11 a.m., and I have one announcement.
Senior Senator from the 17th.
I just want to notify the body that bills and naming resolutions, because the rules were changed this year, that today will be the last day. They have to be down there by 5 p.m. to get approved, so that you can get those back in time to look at them. So please, if you have any outlying bills that you haven't dropped in bill draft, get that in by 5 o'clock today. And Monday, the deadline for introduction will be here. So again, get your bills in. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there announcements? Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 3 p.m. In the Judiciary Committee Room 208 in the West Wing.
Senior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Finance will meet today at 3 p.m. in room 451M.
Are there further announcements? Senator from Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Economic Development will meet 20 minutes after adjournment of this floor session in 451M.
Junior Senator from the 17th.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Pensions shall meet 15 minutes after the Economic Development Committee meets, also in 451.
Are there further announcements? If not, question before the Senate is the Senate stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. All those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned.